Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. All movies have something to say, and we love trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to the Chatter After. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm your host today, and we are talking Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. A couple weeks ago, we did review Black Panther and kind of previewed Wakanda Forever. So we got the same crew. We're back talking about this incredible movie, directed by Ryan Coogler, produced by Kevin Feige, the final film in Phase 4. We've got some thoughts on that as well. But joining me, of course, is Leo from Geekly Goods. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for the invite. Excited to talk some more Wakanda Forever, baby. Oh, I appreciate that. Can't wait to talk a little bit more about this movie. This is, I want to say, my fourth or fifth reviewing this movie, but every single time I talk about it, look, I enjoy it immensely. Are we getting into spoilers though?
It's a spoiler cast. If you haven't seen
Let's
Wakanda
go.
Forever, bounce.
Let's go, baby. I'm ready. Wakanda Forever, baby. Can't wait. Thanks, man. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for coming back. Christian, I see you on the soundboard. How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me back. I'm very excited to talk about this. I've been talking about this movie. I've dissected this movie a lot. But I'm here. It's been a fun weekend. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving as well. But yeah, I'm ready to talk more some Wakanda Forever.
Awesome. And just so everybody knows, Christian is a fighter. He's been up for like the last 20 hours before this show. So shout out to Christian for still being able to make it here with us over this holiday weekend. Elliott, welcome back, man.
Yo.
So the three of us have reviewed this thing like twice at least now. We have not heard your thoughts on Black Panther 2. So I'm going to toss it over to you first. What are your thoughts on this movie?
Cool. Yeah. I came into this film like a lot of people. I mean, I was giving it the hype before going in, saying it's gonna hit the 2 bill. It's gonna do the 2 bill. I was like, I'm excited. I'm ready for this. And I watched it. Now, I think I need to give it kind of a certain like, all right, I might not have been perfectly in the right frame of mind. I'd literally got back from holiday, dumped my bags, straight back out the door. I can't even express to you. It was literally straight back out the door because I got back from holiday and the film had been out for a week already. So I was like, I need to get there. I need to watch it. So I might have been a little tired, a little fuzzy. That being said, I'm not quite sure it was the film I was expecting. I'm not quite sure it was the film that I was ready to see. I think that it brought in some incredible themes and things that we knew it was going to do and things that we wanted to see. We're talking about the grief. We're talking about the loss. We're talking about the vengeance, blah, blah, blah. But I think in a film that is over 2.5 hours, it got very lost exactly what it wanted to do. Did it want to... Now, look, what I was going to say is, did it want to hang on to that grief? I mean, of course, like it's a central theme to that film, so it needs to thread all the way through. But I just kind of feel it got stuck between being a tribute and pushing the story forward. And I think there were too many times where it got stuck on wanting to be the tribute that it forgot that it does need to still push the story forward. And at those times, I just kind of got a bit, yes, no, we know. Can we let's find a way to move forward. Let's find a way to develop that into new ideas and into new threads and moving these characters that are still with us forward.
Yeah.
And the new characters we're introducing, why are we introducing them? Because there are a couple that I feel ended up being a bit of a MacGuffin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a valid criticism, I think, because again, Ryan Coogler had almost the impossible task of trying to push that story forward while honoring and respecting the loss that the cast and all of us had with Chadwick Boseman's passing. So yeah, it's not like a Batman story where this is clearly passing the mantle on to Robin, right? We had to really dig in and like claw our way to that point to get Shuri to the level where she can become the Black Panther.
Yeah.
Leah, what are your thoughts on kind of how they tackled that concept, right, of grief and finding that balance?
I thought they tackled it well. I thought it was a brilliant move to bookend the movie with Chadwick Boseman. I thought that he came up in conversation at the best times. T'Challa, I thought it was a great way to start the movie, great way to end the movie and button it all up. And then, of course, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but the post credit, I thought really tied things together as well. You get another T'Challa in there, T'Challa Jr. the second. I thought that was a great setup for that character, and that actor looks exactly like Lupita and Chadwick rolled into one. So the casting department, seriously, props, kudos, because that kid looks like them. I think that Elliott brings up a good point that sometimes it feels like the movie can lose its footing a bit. And I think for me, it hit the most during the moments with Val and Ross. I think that's where sometimes we could come to a bit of a screeching halt because we need to focus more on the Namor and on those characters and that civilization of Talokan. And we're doing that. And then all of a sudden it shifts focus to Ross and Val. And I thought their interference really just didn't add anything to the movie. And I do think for Namor to be so fixated on chasing Ironheart, Riri Williams, we don't get a scene with them too. And that takes away from it as well. I mean, you have, just like Killmonger, who was a bit of a tyrant, a bit extreme in his ways, in his motives, but the motives made sense. You have a second character like that, but he never comes head on with that motive. So I think that took away from it a little bit as well. But in terms of where they really went into the grief and the loss of this all, I thought was well done. And the argument could be made that the Queen Ramonda stuff is a little much, but I thought it added on to Shuri's story even more. And I like that we see Killmonger in her vision, because you can see any Black Panther in those visions, and they chose specifically the one that she could relate to the most, which was Killmonger in this instance. And I love that play on the character. I love where they took Shuri with that. So I thought it was a pretty well-balanced movie, but I do think what Elliott had to say was valid criticisms, that sometimes it can really get a little bit lost in where it wants to go because there's just so much to accomplish in this movie.
Well, and I know you're going to go to Christian, Michael, but I just kind of want to tap onto the back of that, because I think that this is where the movie kind of not necessarily falls apart for me, but where it loses its threads, because specifically with Riri being introduced, and for me, she was the character that ended up being the MacGuffin, because it was like, why is she here? The only reason Namor kind of goes after her is because, I mean, it's a valid reason why he wants to go after her, right? She has successfully built a machine that can detect vibranium, and they've discovered it near his home city, right? But then, why is she then important to Shuri's story? And she is never made important to Shuri's story. And there's something they could have so easily done, which they give us at the end of the film, when Shuri has rebuilt Riri's dad's car, and he's like, "Yeah, I lost my dad. Like, I feel what you're feeling." Like, why is that not a thread from the beginning of the film? Why is it, because I think, especially that middle part with Shuri and Okoye going over to America, this is where I feel things get lost, is that they try to play in the humor and keep it light, because we're kind of used to that with the MCU, right? We like a bit of humor. These are funny characters. Okoye was hilarious in the first film. In fact, she's been hilarious all the way through. And so, right. So there's all this that they're trying to bring back in, but it's like, or we could just, if Shuri is supposed to be grieving, let's leave her in that, and that, Namor has given her this task. And what if she's like, yeah, great, I need the world to burn, so I'm just gonna go do this. This person is Namor's, he's a man of action, and I need action. I need to just, and then meeting Riri, who's also going through this grieving process, could be the thing that the person that helps drag her back through, due to both sharing this thing. And it was just that connectivity that was missing for me in this film.
Yeah, it's one of those things where even something as simple as having Riri be one of the students from Oakland, right? Because we see at the end of the first movie that Shuri and T'Challa want to start, this program in Oakland where Killmonger's from. So like even just making that the connective thread, and it's like she's important because
That would have been
she
good.
she's part of
Yeah.
T'Challa's legacy in a way.
I
right?
totally
And
forgot about that part towards the end of the movie. I was like,
it's really weird how you have her from MIT, but you don't have
Yeah.
Ned or MJ or anybody cameo. I was like, what was the point? You could have just had her
Yeah.
in the thing that made sense for this movie.
Not
Yeah.
even Ned. Come on,
Marvel
man.
does that sometimes,
Flash.
though.
But
Like-
there you are as well. Like if Riri was the a part of T'Challa's legacy, and then Shuri's got Namor and Killmonger dragging her that anger route, but then Riri and T'Challa bringing her back the other way. I don't know. For me, that would have rung a lot deeper, and I would have been a lot more interested in that. But there we are. I've spoken a lot.
She's very much kind of like America Chavez was in Multiverse of Madness, where it's like it's the kid we've got to protect for the entire movie.
Yeah.
The only reason
And she
I
doesn't
think,
do much. Well, Riri does more.
She does a bit more than
Shuri.
America.
Yeah.
She's actually gets in the battle. You know what I mean? Got the suit.
but that's why to me Riri I think is at least a better written character than America was, because
Yeah.
the motivation, while I agree with Elliott that it should be a bit tighter, I still understand, because essentially she's an innocent kid that Namor wants to kill.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
all we need to really get on board. But yeah, to make a tighter, more impactful story, having that bigger connection, I think, would definitely improve it.
I agree.
And see, there's a little bit of that thread, right, where Killmonger brings up while they're interacting, him and Shuri says T'Challa was too noble. There is that little bit of thread there where it's kind of like the angel devil type of deal, but it was Ramonda who brought her back from that spell. So I'm with you, Elliot. I think a little bit more T'Challa, like being the catalyst for bringing her out of that, could have helped make that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Christian.
I actually agree with Elliot on that. I mean, I do enjoy the movie. I thought that, the grieving process was perfect. It reminded me a lot of The Last of Us Part 2 in a lot of ways. But yeah, when it comes, because, you're trying to pay tribute to Chadwick, but also push the story forward, even though it is like a self-contained story. I'm actually really happy they didn't include like any extra unnecessary like post-credit scenes with like Doctor Doom, things like that. But I do agree with Riri. I think it would have been better if she came from that program that they created in the first movie, because it would have been a better connection. I mean, I loved her. I felt like her introduction was natural, but at the same time, it was kind of weird how Namor is like, I have to kill this kid, because at one point they're all in the same room, but they don't really, because Namor kind of like sees her like off in the distance, but I'm like, I mean, do you really need to like kill her? So you're like, hey, like, can you just not make any more, please? Like, we're trying to like, he's trying to protect his people, but no,
not just that. I feel like the U.S. would already have the schematics to make more. Like her job is now done.
I wonder how much time has passed between Black Panther and this one within Wakanda Forever.
Well, it's about 6 years, isn't it? Because
about 6 years.
The two
His
songs
son's
gives us
about
that date.
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blip, time jump. Yeah, we're looking at 6 to 7-ish.
Did baby T'Challa get blipped?
No, hold on.
It's a valid question. But no, I will say, because you guys were mentioning earlier with Riri being from MIT, it would have been like, even if they couldn't get like Zendaya, like have her bump in the Ned or someone, because we've seen in a lot of movies where a lot of this stuff takes place in New York. And I'm not gonna lie, like for like a hot second, I was expecting to see some kind of Peter Parker show up in Falcon and Winter Soldier for like a hot second, because I mean that's his city. Like, why would he not be there? But it could have been, he could have been doing something else, whatever. But at the same time, I feel like that probably would have taken away from that story, despite everything that happened with it. But yeah, I do find it is a little bit weird that like if she goes to MIT, at least, and this is supposed to be a shared universe. I'm not saying she has to like be sitting at a lunch table with Ned and MJ, but like just like a small little interaction or something would have been nice. But yeah, I mean, I think Riri is a really great character. I mean, her introduction was good in this movie, but I think it could have been better.
That's my opinion on a lot of things with this film. Like, I still love it. You know, I gave it a 4 out of 5, but the
Yeah.
reason it's not a 5 out of 5 is because of that very reason, right? There's a lot of things that I enjoy, but there's a lot that could have been better.
But it's like, yeah, like you said before, in the impossible task, it's like I kind of give it the benefit of the doubt because of the situation that Ryan Coogler was in. But yeah.
So this movie, it's very heavy. Like, how did we feel about the tribute to Chadwick early on? I know Leo kind of touched on it in one of his earlier points, but like bookending it with T'Challa and like having us let that character go, having Shuri be able to accept what happened and move on from that. I thought that was a very fitting end to the story, but I want your guys' opinions. Elliott, you can go first again since Christian just got done talking.
I'm sorry, I was ranting.
You're good.
No, I actually do think the book ending was very beautiful, actually. And I think, you know, because I was going into the film thinking that the first 10 minutes of the film, 15 minutes of the film was going to touch on what happened to T'Challa anyway, and kind of get that initial point through and out the way. And so I expected that. And then by the end, because, you know, the parts where I thought Shuri was really strong was once she got the powers of the Black Panther. And I really, because then she was tackling that grief, she was tackling that anger. Like, do I kill him? Do I, you know, do it, or do I find another way? And for all intents and purposes, like that final battle, it just felt dark. It felt that there was a weight behind it. It felt that the Wakandans were fighting with their grief and their anger and their vengeance. And that, I thought that was it was kind of unsettlingly beautiful, you know. And so that when we have that moment of Shuri finally burning her funeral clothing and her seeing and remembering T'Challa, I really thought that is powerful, and that is props to that. And you know, it's you're just saying the rating you gave it. It's, you know, it's why I still gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not as if I've put it on the complete lower end altogether. There was still moments where I generally, the film did still bring tears to my eyes. So, and it was for moments like that. It was for moments seeing Shuri in the grief, because, you know, Nakia had found a way to move on. Ramona had found a way to kind of move on. Okoye was, as always, will do her duty. But and I think it was beautiful to see Shuri still stuck in there, because definitely the relationship felt between her and T'Challa in the first film. I could see how she'd be affected the most by it, or at least affected the most and not quite know how to continue on, you know? So those bookends were some of the stronger parts of the film, definitely.
Leo.
Yeah, just echoing what I said earlier, I thought that was like a powerful tool in this movie to keep us on track with Shuri's journey, but also to still remind us that unfortunately we did lose not only T'Challa but Chadwick Boseman. So I thought that it was like a great montage of clips, and I love that the opening for the movie is silent. What a great way to play with audio and just like make it heavy from the start and make it clear that it's unfortunate that we had to lose the main character of this movie. Very unfortunate. And I thought that was a great way to pay tribute. Again, while still keeping us also on Shuri's journey. And I like the injection of humor. I like that stuff because, yes, it is an MCU movie. And I thought felt more natural here than probably the last 3 or 4 movies. So I liked the comedy aspect when they got to MIT. But yeah, I think they're both beautifully done. The playing with sound, no sound at all. Man, I miss T'Challa, man. Like, I'm gonna be 100%. I miss him, and I just remember seeing that at the beginning, and I was already crying. Like, I was not prepared for that. But I thought they handled it very, very gracefully, because that was something that I was a little bit worried about. And me and Elliott actually talked about this a little bit, that there would be maybe a little too much of that. And that it would take away from the overall story and the progression, but I love what it does for it. And yeah,
Yeah.
you begin it and end it with T'Challa. Like I thought that was very, very great. And then also just roping in things throughout the movie, like Killmonger mentioning him toward the end. And not only that, I mean, M'Baku is a symbol for just how much influence he had in Wakanda. I mean, think about it. This is the guy that encountered him at the beginning of the movie, challenging him for the throne of the first one. Now is a guidance for his sister in the second because of his respect for T'Challa. So to me, it just symbolizes how Wakanda and how the people of Wakanda are with their enemies. They're forgiving. They embrace them with a warm hug. They invite them to the dinner table and say, look, we can work this out a different way. And I love that injection of T'Challa throughout the movie, that he just, no matter what, his influence is always going to be there. So I loved it.
It's one of those things where T'Challa is such an influential character in the MCU. And it's crazy to think that we only had one solo film with that character, right? Because throughout the entire story, and one of my favorite beats is you constantly question, like, well, what would T'Challa do in this situation? And that's great storytelling because we know what he would do throughout this entire movie. And that's the battle that Shuri has to deal with, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not T'Challa. How do I go about this in my own way? How does she find herself? And I even love how we get to her costume, right? It's equal parts Killmonger and equal parts T'Challa, showing that she is this hybrid of the two essentially, which I thought was really fascinating. And yeah, having that intro be dead silent and then having the ending, you can hear a pin drop in my theater. Like nobody said a word except for some sniffles because it was that emotional. And I think they found that balance perfectly. But still allowing that humor, right? I think that's why that 1 year time jump was so important, because they didn't want us to be bogged down by grief entirely, because this isn't fiction. Again, this is us actually losing the main actor for this film, and it was just weird being back in Wakanda without T'Challa by itself. That felt kind of strange and bizarre. So I think that time skip really allowed them to say, hey, some of these characters like M'Baku and Okoye were able to get somewhat back to normal, but Shuri's the one who's still struggling with this, which allowed it to not be the most depressing movie ever made. That's at least how I kind of see it. What about you, Christian?
Yeah, since you guys are talking about like how it all ties in, I think the tribute was, I think it was perfect, in the way that they were able to actually show how art can imitate life, and how they addressed T'Challa's passing in the film, because they just said, he was taken from like an unknown illness, which, in real life was cancer. And they kind of just left it at that. They didn't try to make this, grand exposition of what exactly happened to him. But I think the tribute for him altogether was great, especially towards the end. I did not expect that post credit scene whatsoever, and I was like, oh, this is kind of Marvel's way of having their cake and eating it too, because so many people were worried about the recasting of T'Challa, and now they can have his son possibly, in future MCU films, take that mantle, and they can have T'Challa back in the MCU. While it may not be played by Chadwick Boseman, they're still able to tell those stories of T'Challa from his adventures in the comics and bring them into light for the MCU.
Yeah, very, very valid. It's one of those things where I kind of look at Marvel comics and look at DC comics, right? And legacy characters don't really exist in Marvel. Like, Black Panther has just always been T'Challa for the most part, right?
Mhm.
Whereas, yeah, different people have become Batman. That's just a part of DC's history. They have all the sidekicks. And Stan Lee was always very adamant of, we don't need sidekicks. Our only kid hero is Spider-Man, and he's no one's sidekick. And it's like,
Preach.
that's dope in comic form, but then you get to the MCU and it's like these actors are getting older, and all of a sudden you have characters like Ironheart start to exist, Miles Morales starts to exist, and these are all characters that were created within the last 15 to 20 years, right? Some of them are great, some of them are a little weaker. So they were really in a tough spot where this was a Batman story. You just have Dick Grayson become Batman, right? But this is like, and Ryan Coogler even said, what character should become Black Panther, and they threw out M'Baku and they threw out Nakia and Shuri, and it kind of goes back. Ellie, I think you made a video on that too a little while back, right? If I'm not mistaken, about like who gets the mantle of the
Oh,
Black Panther.
yeah, it was a
And
while back. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember the conversations we were having though, back all the way back then. I'll link that in the description too. It was a really good one. But it's one of those things where Nakia always to me felt like the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Leah, I want to toss it over to you right quick. Are you happy with it being Shuri, or would you have still preferred it be someone else?
So prior to the film, I was actively saying I didn't want it to be Shuri. Honestly, I was not guessing that it would be Shuri because I think the trailers made it very obvious that it was going to be Shuri. Looking back now and looking at the teaser, the trailers, there's all these hints and nudges, and I thought that was just an easy way to get to it. Like, I was like, nah, they couldn't hint it that hard and make it that easy for us to figure out that it was Shuri. And when it ended up getting into the actual movie and going on this journey of grief shared by this family specifically, I think that it made perfect sense for Shuri to become the Black Panther at the end here. I think, again, going in, I was not as excited just because a couple of things that have happened with Letitia outside of the film, but I really did love this character's journey. I love that it mirrored the beginning of T'Challa's journey, but in a sense, it was actually still very different in my opinion because she comes from being a scientist and she brings that layer into it of not believing in the spirit of the Black Panther that as much as T'Challa did. So I think even though there is a lot of parallels between the beginning of their journeys, there's still some key differences that make this feel like its own characterization of the Black Panther, and I love that. I love that it's not necessarily complete machine copy and paste from Civil War. Even though you have similar quotes, you've got same shots. Even I love it. I love the references, but we still have a completely different character here who doesn't even necessarily believe in the lore, which I think makes sense for a scientist to question religion because that's usually the case. So I loved going down this path with this character, getting her to the point where she needs to be the Black Panther for the people. And then I like the decision at the end for her to make what seems to be an in-character moment where she decides to give it to M'Baku. I mean, M'Baku's the one that shows up at the end. So I like that decision for that character because she was never necessarily wanting to rule in the first place. So I like how individually characterized this is, and at the same time also mirrors Chadwick Boseman T'Challa. I love that. I love the parallels. I love that she learns the same lesson as he did with Zemo. Like, these are things that I think, especially from people who experienced loss to that level, seeing their parent be killed right in front of them, I think that it was a good lesson for, like I said earlier in the podcast, Wakanda becoming this place of, no matter what, we can invite our enemies to the dinner table and have a discussion as opposed to killing and outright like killing our enemies. I love that. It's a humane sense for these people, and like it gives such a positive beat to the people of Wakanda. Because I mean, T'Chaka, that was a burn, man. Like against his brother, I can see where Killmonger was coming from with that because it's like that's your own family, that's your own blood. So I love that we always are sharing the table in Wakanda, and I like that that's where Shuri's arc ends up because I was a little worried about the vengeful stuff. I'm not gonna front with you guys. I thought maybe she was going to actually kill Namor. I was like, oh, maybe
she should have.
Yeah, wow. But that's the beauty of it, though, isn't it? Is that that's the beauty of it, that not killing him, what does that mercy lead to? And I think that's really, for me, that's what makes it interesting. That's what gives it a 3D-ness, for want of a better phrase. And you're right. Like, she completely learned that legacy from T'Challa. Zemo lived. Claw, he gave mercy to. Killmonger, he gave mercy. Killmonger decided to take the spear out and let himself die.
He invited Bucky to stay.
Yeah, like literally, yeah. He is
Literally.
that guy. You know,
He
and
did.
Killmonger can say he's too noble, but all these decisions he made worked in his favor in the end. You know, okay, look, leaving Claw to live meant that Killmonger got the invitation into Wakanda, but you know, and that's what T'Challa was trying to overcome and trying to learn was like, are you going to, you know, his dad didn't show mercy, and he wanted to be different to that, and in the end, it worked out for him. But yeah, I think it's an interesting idea of Shuri being the Black Panther. I think one thing that kind of stood out, my girlfriend kind of brought up that she was a bit disappointed with Shuri becoming the Black Panther on the grounds that what always set Shuri aside was that she was the brains. She wasn't necessarily the fighter. And so she kind of, you know, she had that thing going for her. Like, you use Infinity War as a perfect example. Oh, why didn't you guys just do this thing? And Bruce being like, oh, because we didn't think of it.
Think of that.
Yeah, you know, like
Yeah.
she always had that one extra thing going for her, which meant she didn't have to put on a suit. And you know, the one time that she did, it was just a sonic vibrator that she used to try and pin Killmonger down. You know, as opposed to anything that was really, you know, as opposed to Panther claws. So yeah, but I mean, I think certainly for this film, it definitely made sense that she became the Black Panther because she was the one still going through that grief and wanted to fight and needed that for her. And yeah, and Leah, I like what you say. I do really enjoy that she is the child that scoffs at tradition, but in the end, tradition was what she needed, in a way. You know, picking up
Yeah.
the heart shaped herb.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of glad you mentioned that point, right? Of we never really saw Shuri as like this fighter because she was
Mm.
the brains. And I said this on Leo's channel when we were talking about it the weekend it came out. One of the moments that I loved was that she has a line where she says she learned everything she knows from T'Challa. Because in the comics, T'Challa is one of the smartest people alive and one of the best fighters in the Marvel universe. So it's like Shuri just embodies that same idea, right? Of what comic book T'Challa always represented, even if the movies kind of gave a lot of the brain aspect to the character of Shuri.
Mm.
But you got to go back and think all his Black Panther suits, he said he made himself. She was just the one in the lab tinkering, working on it all that time and improving it, but improving his original designs, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is a fair critique about her never appearing to be like the strong of a fighter. But that's why I also really like her fight with Namor too, right? Is that she at the end she's not doing like insane karate or anything like that, right?
No.
She's not fighting like Terry Silver. She's just throwing singular punches. Oh yeah,
Love it.
Invoke the name.
But yeah, like you can tell that her fighting style is still kind of sloppy compared to Nakia, Okoye, and even T'Challa. And I think I kind of like the raw, just aggression that she shows in her fight scenes. But Christian, what are your thoughts on everything?
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Wow.
That's a different podcast.
Very good.
No, it's just everything. Especially with Shuri becoming Black Panther, I think it does make the most sense. I mean, it would have been great to see, you know, Nakia or even Okoye or maybe even M'Baku, but for the sake of the film and for the sake of, you know, T'Challa's family, it makes sense that she would at least be Black Panther for now. I think they've started to kind of separate the fact that, oh, the Black Panther doesn't necessarily have to be the leader of Wakanda. We can have a leader of Wakanda and have a protector. So I think hopefully they might go that way. It really just depends. But overall, yeah, I mean it's just a great ride of a movie too. Because I mean, the more I think about it, the more I like it, even though it still sits in that 4 out of 5 star range for me. But it's with Shuri trying to, like, Shuri took the herb to take care of business. She didn't take it, you know, to want to be the leader. She wanted to, you know, end this fight that was happening with Namor. And I like how that is very Killmonger of her, because she doesn't really care about, becoming a leader. She just wants to grieve in her own way. And we see that towards the end of the movie where she is in Haiti at this time. And I think she's going to be there for a while. I don't think she's necessarily going to take up her family's, legacy, probably just pass that on to somebody else. But I also don't think she'll be Black Panther forever either, because if she is, that's totally fine. But, they introduced, T'Challa Jr. for a reason. So, yeah.
I think TJ is just a seed that's going to be planted, and we're going to come back in a decade and be like, all right,
TJ,
your time's now. Because that'll put him in like the 17-year-old range, right? Which is roughly Peter Parker.
They'll call him up, the same actor. Hey, you busy? What's up? You busy?
They might just recast, because they did that with Cassie too. Remember?
Yeah.
They got like 3 different girls playing.
Dude, I was
daughter.
so sad that they. Oh man, now I'm sad all over again.
Like, okay, cool, Cassie. All right, see ya. Cool, we got a new one.
Right.
Yeah.
Crazy. We didn't talk about the villain yet. We're 36 minutes into this recording and haven't talked about Namor. Elliott, what are your thoughts on Namor the Submariner? This is a very different take on the character than we've seen in Marvel Comics, but I love them.
Yeah, so I mean, this is my real introduction to Namor. My kind of first introduction to him. I've recently read Secret 2015, but there are so many characters in that he's not really there. So this is my first real introduction to Namor, and I loved him. He is easily definitely one of my favorite Phase 4 villains, potentially one of my favorite MCU villains overall. There was something I think it's because his motivation comes from a place of wanting to protect. It's not, and he's kind of similar to Killmonger in that way. His I want to say his outcome might not necessarily be the worst thing. It probably is, wanting to completely take over the world, but it's
one of those things where it's like, I get it.
Because it's through protection, I think, and it's not through just coveting power, which just makes it slightly more interesting. It's preservation as opposed to coveting, which I think is just slightly more interesting. And his kind of first proper fight scene, when they attack Wakanda, because he just moves so differently to anybody else. He's so unique in that way. I just found it very compelling and really interesting. And before recording this, the morning of recording this, I was recording for Andor, and I was saying how Andor kind of did something really nice in that you cared for the bad guys it wanted you to care about. And I think that it's done a similar thing here, in that I cared for Namor, so that when he was fighting in Wakanda, I was like, yeah, hit that plane. Yeah, you do that. Yeah, throw your spear. And I just kind of felt myself being like, you're too cool that why am I rooting for you right now? I shouldn't be, especially what he goes on to do at the end of that battle as well. But and Tenoch Huerta, I thought, really played the vulnerability of Namor beautifully. I think he captured the strength, and I think he did. I think personally, he did a lot of what Chadwick did in Black Panther, in the first Black Panther. This guy who people have heard of. I know Chadwick had been around probably a bit more than Tenoch Huerta has up until this point, but he kind of came in and he held that screen presence. He held his own in such an established universe with characters and actors that are like we love and are attached to, and it was just a great job all around. And I'm really glad he survived. I really look forward to seeing what Namor does next.
Yeah, they learned their lesson of not killing off all of their great villains, because I love how you mentioned his motivation. It's just to protect Talokan, right? And I think having Namor be a recurring character, not even in a villainous role necessarily, because by all accounts he's not really a bad guy, even though he did start a war with Wakanda. But
No,
He's
like,
just
I just-
misunderstood.
I was just thinking Wreck-It Ralph then. Just because Namor bad guy doesn't mean he bad guy.
exactly. So Namor can show up in Secret Wars, and he can be an
Yeah.
ally, right? And in the same way, M'Baku started off as kind of an antagonist role, and he ends up calling T'Challa his brother by the time we
Yeah.
get to Infinity War, right? So I really love what they did with Namor. Christian, what are your thoughts on how they handled Namor?
I enjoy Namor immensely, even from the first moment that we see him when he kind of sneaks into Wakanda. It really shows how dangerous he is because he was able to sneak past Wakanda's defenses, and the you. I like how they actually show how they display how powerful Namor is. He's not just it's not just all this all talk like it's like Gore the God Butcher, like he kills all these gods. Unfortunately, we only see him kill one god, so it's like
Yeah.
it is what it is. But with Namor, we got to see a great display of his strength of his empire, because I think he said when he at first came to Wakanda, he was talking to Queen Ramonda that he has more people in his army than they do blades of grass, which is very scary, by the way. But you also see, the rest of his empire and how they sing that super eerie song. It puts people in a trance. He's a very dangerous villain. I am kind of glad that they kept him alive. I mean, like you guys said, it would have been easy to kill him off, but he is the world's first mutant. So hopefully we'll be able to see him in other projects moving forward. But I thought his motivations were valid. I thought, he's just trying to protect his, his people and, their way of life, and, being another secret or secret civilization, a way of, not kind of pulling wool over the rest of the world's eyes, made it, I don't know, it made it relatable. I mean, Talo Khan looked beautiful, by the way. I was like, absolutely blown away. But yeah, I really enjoyed Tanaka Kurata as Namor, because he killed it. I think he's also in the Narcos series as well. So, and I actually haven't watched that myself, but now I kind of want to. But yeah, he was. I mean, he was great. I mean, also his two generals, like, I don't know what it is with Marvel and like bridge scenes, but like they kill it every single time. Like with Okoye, like you actually got to see how strong his civilization was. It wasn't just all talk. Like they backed it up immensely.
Oh yeah, 100%. That bridge scene is fantastic, and the ramifications of that with Queen Ramonda like just firing Okoye is
It's
like,
crazy.
dang.
I mean, even when he kills Queen Ramonda and he says, mourn your losses, the real battles yet to come, or something of that nature. Like, that was like Game of Thrones levels. I was like, okay, this is like getting kind of serious here. Like, like as soon as he throws that water bomb, he knows that she's gone. He's like, he's like, mourn your losses, do what you need to do. He's like, and I'm coming back for you. I was like,
You never give the heroes prep time.
Never. And Baku was like, oh my gosh, he's so obsessed with the fish man, and then completely got destroyed. I love that slow motion scene though. Usually I'm not too big of a fan. I mean, thanks to Zack Snyder, but
dude,
it's like,
catching strays for no reason.
No, do you know?
But I did enjoy where he literally broke through, where when Namor broke through M'Baku's armor. Like, that was it really, again, it just displays how powerful he is. Like, I mean, he's a mutant. He's had these powers since birth. It's not something that happened to him later in life. Like, this is who he is, and he knows he's a mutant, and I'm excited to see more of him.
Did you notice after that fight, M'Baku, his wooden spear got broke, and then when they come to the battle later, he had a metal one, a vibration.
Yeah. Can't take any more chances.
No,
gotta break out the good stuff.
Shout out to Ryan Coogler for being the first person in the MCU to say the word mutant or refer to the mutants without having the da-na-na-na-na
I
play.
kind of wish it was there. I
Like,
wish it was
someone
there.
had restraint.
I wish it was there.
Do
Every
any of you
single
guys
time.
follow,
It needs to be a running joke in Marvel. Every single time someone says mutants, they just throw it into the score.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I wanted that. Like, I want every time they say mute, I want to.
We get it.
It was in Miss Marvel. It was in Multiverse of Madness. As soon as he dropped that N word, I wanted like a little push into him.
They just
just
he
stares at the camera going.
I'm mutant.
Exactly.
Stares at the
Eyebrow
camera.
raised.
We get it.
Do any of y'all follow Theories by Ty, British guy?
Mm-mm.
No.
Check him out.
Does he do Marvel theories?
Yeah, I mean Marvel, Star Wars, DC. Like, I mean, he's mainly Marvel guy. But he's done quite well. He works for MTV as well, interviewing. He interviewed the cast of Wakanda Forever for MTV.
Nice.
Yeah. But I've met him in person. Really lovely guy. But he posted a video on his TikTok. Someone had kind of pointed him in the direction that scene in MIT when Shuri and Okoye, Riri picks up her heater. And Okoye goes, "What are you going to do? Defeat the fishman with your heater?" And then how do they end up defeating Namor at the end?
Oh.
And I was just like, I watched this video by Ty, and I was like, crazy.
That is like so great.
That's actually very clever. I never noticed that.
No, that is actually amazing foreshadowing. Leo, what are your thoughts on Namor?
Great. I mean, I definitely didn't match the personality from the comics, but I thought they changed the character in a way that people could actually relate to this character, and I thought it brought in a beat of relatability, and it brought in introduced these rich themes that I think this movie definitely could have used. So I love what they did with this character. I love what they did with his civilization of Talokan. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it to me, it more realistically reflected what I think an underworld city would look like, or underwater city would look like, as opposed to Aquaman, which things looked a little bit mystical, magical, but like it looked more believable in Talokan. And I love that shot of just that vibranium sun coming out of the top of that his castle. That was just so beautifully shot. But I mean, Tanakh, well done. His presence was amazing. I mean, the fact that he could be on scene and looking Ramonda in the eye, and that right there was fierce in and of itself, just goes to show how much the character was respected and regarded. I love that in the first introduction of Namor he's not even in the scene. It's in that bridge scene where his people are representing him, and you see how respected he is through their eyes and actions. So I love that he has so much influence already. I mean, think about Killmonger. He came by himself, but like Namor was somebody who brought influence, not only just who he was. It was like he had a whole civilization of people regard him as a god. So this was a character that not only had the motivations that are relatable, but also people behind those motivations who thought what he was doing was perfectly fine and right. And I believe it was Elliott who said it, or actually it was Christian, I think. But like the fact that he had as many warriors as blades of grass, like to drop that line just makes you intimidated, because it's like, okay, this guy's got influence, he's got power, he's got respect, he's got all the things that a monarch would have, and he's about to close in. So he felt like a villain that was actually a threat, but at the same time you could relate to where he was coming. I mean, he's trying to protect his people and trying to prevent the other people from discovering their underwater civilization. It's so relatable when you see these scenes, the scene where he discovers his mother's land and they've been enslaved, and it's just, it's so well done. I mean, seriously, I really consider him top 5, top 10 MCU villain of all time material. And I'm glad that Marvel did abandon throwing away villains, because it was an issue that they had in phases 1 through 3, where it was just like every great villain that's introduced, Killmonger, for example, was just recycled and thrown away. And then we're bringing back people like Ultron. I mean, seriously, I think it was a great idea to keep him around. So then he could pop up in other movies. He might be in Black Panther 3. There's more to this character that we can learn. And hopefully the rights get over to the MCU soon for like a movie or something. But I'm sure I wasn't too sure about the details there, but maybe a TV series. We'll have to wait and see. But I do want more with this character. I'm more curious about this character after seeing the portrayal. And I just think, wow, the way he commanded the camera, the gravitas of this role was huge. And I loved how it could be relatable on both sides, how people of Wakanda could relate. And that's why they continue to offer their handout to these people instead of killing them, instead of taking their lives. Like, let's talk. So I love the character of Namor. I thought a very great characterization, great changes. And I love how this is a more relatable Namor to people in reality. Like, this is a more relatable beat to this character. So I love the changes that they brought to the character. Yeah, he's a little more cocky and conceited in the comics, but I'm okay with them abandoning that thread of the character.
Yeah.
I think it was a well done and well made choice for this movie. So I love Namor.
I think
You know what? I do have something to say though.
Shoot.
Okay. I admit your boy was looking a little funny with the wing ankles in the first appearance. I was kind of like, look, man, I don't know about that. But when he was in battle, it looked really cool. And he was like swimming through the air. So it made sense when he was in motion. But when my man was floating on them ankles, y'all, I was kind of like, all right, man, this is looking a little goofy, my guy. But it really justified when he was battling and he's like swimming through the air. So it made sense there.
Yeah. I think the changes that they made to Namor work in the MCU because it does make him the perfect like mirror to T'Challa, right? And something Ryan Coogler even said was Namor was always a part of the script, even before Chadwick passed. It's like he was always made to be the perfect foil to T'Challa. Yeah. And I think it's really fascinating how that character is now going against Shuri, right? Because he, like, from his point of view, he is doing the noble thing. He is protecting his kingdom. He's in the right, from his point of view. And that's what we always say makes a great villain, right? Is that when they think they're the hero, that's when you know you have a strong villain. And so I think having that as opposed to like the cocky dick that we get in the comics, I think makes for a much stronger character, especially for the story that they were telling. But Leo, you mentioned Black Panther 3 briefly there. Where do we think this franchise is going, or where do we want it to go? I'm going to start with you, Christian.
Honestly, I have no clue where this franchise is going to go. I mean, whatever. I'm more of the wait and see type of person where, you know, I just want a good story with, you know, that pushes that, you know, it can push the MCU further, but I do want it to close out. I mean, if they decide to make this a trilogy, because, you know, Thor got a fourth movie and Captain America is also getting a fourth movie. But if they decide to close it out with the trilogy, I just want it to make sense. I want it to come to a close, and, you know, they can always leave it open for interpretation afterwards. But, you know, if they decide to make this Black Panther trilogy, I just want the next installment to be as self-contained as the first, as Black Panther and Wakanda Forever altogether. But I don't have any, like, you know, story arcs, but I just want it to be contained and slightly push the MCU forward, but, you know, just come out with a nice close if they decide to make it a trilogy, or, you know, they could do a fourth movie as well. So it just depends.
Gotcha. Elliott, what about you?
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily look to Black Panther 3. I think that I look more to the next big ensemble film, if that is going to be Kang's Dynasty, or if there is going to be something in the middle of that, similar to what Civil War was like. And I think what I'm looking for there is for Wakanda to have more of an influence overall, because especially from what we got at the beginning of this film, that Wakanda is shown to be the strongest nation on Earth. That they saw through the French coming after their vibranium. That they were holding the US off as well, and so I just kind of feel that I want to see more of them on the world stage, and by world stage here I mean Avengers world stage within the superhero world. I think that's what I look towards. I don't necessarily need to see how every single Avenger feels about the passing of T'Challa. But I do want to see how they move forward with Shuri and M'Baku and everyone else. So, and yeah, I think that's what I look forward to more. Is what is Wakanda's position now with the rest of the Avengers?
That's very, very valid. And I kind of, because one thing my sister pointed out when we were watching the movie, she's like, it's weird how none of the Avengers were at T'Challa's funeral. But then you kind of look at it, and then you're like, well, who would show up? Because everyone that he's interacted with are gone. Stark is gone. Steve is gone. Right? Natasha's gone. Who knows what the Hulk is doing? He may have been off world at that point.
Maybe Hawkeye can make an appearance.
I don't know. Look, man, Steve could have caned his way up to the.
Steve is dead, according to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Remember?
No, he's on the moon. He's on the moon.
Yeah, I'm like,
Sure.
no, that ain't confirmed now.
Yeah, it was weird. I saw a tweet that was like, yeah, but why would they invite his work colleagues? And I was like, yeah, but also work colleagues do go to funerals. Like,
Yeah, the hell?
They do.
I'm like, look, they want to talk about in Black Adam and that the JLA ain't showing up to Kahndaq. I'm like, look, none of the Avengers showed up to T'Challa's funeral. Man.
Yeah, I think you could have.
I'm sure y'all interacted once or twice. Strange, come on.
I mean, I think the most you probably could have had would have been Bucky, but
yeah, Bucky should have been there. Everybody else.
I think Bucky and probably
sense.
Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. Sorry,
she's dead.
Well, I'm saying if she was alive, that's what I'm saying.
Sam and Bucky are the only ones that make sense.
Yeah,
because they gave him the Captain America suit. Remember, it made of vibranium. So it's like
I think that would have been a good placement. You put the new Captain America in there. Have War Machine pop up. Couple others, like I think you could have had a few cameos in that.
Yeah,
opening funeral.
I guess my entire point is it'll be interesting to see this new cast of characters interact with Shuri as the Black Panther, because they never really encountered T'Challa's Black Panther. Like even Peter, nobody remembers who he is.
Exactly. So why would he be? Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see this entire new wave of characters come up, and that's why Phase 4 to me is so interesting. While I don't love everything that's kind of come out of it, these are like a ton of new characters. What's the new Avengers Initiative going to look like, and how are we going to get there? Mm-hmm. But Leo, what are your thoughts on where we're going from here, or what you want to see?
I think you totally just answered that question for me with just like, where do we go with these characters? There's a lot of new characters, a lot of characters whose situations have changed since the last time. Like, I mean, Strange at the end of his movie walking into the Dormammu dimension with Charlize Theron's character, and you got Moon Knight now, you got She-Hulk, you got Miss Marvel. Like, yeah, where's the lead up? Where's the next big Avengers initiative going to end up? Are we headed for Young Avengers? Like, I'm curious to see where those things go, because I'm 99% sure like T'Challa was built up to be the next leader for the Avengers. So it's kind of, I'm curious to see where they take that lineup and where things go with that character. As far as Black Panther 3, I think I'll have to wait and see, because I would love to see a Doctor Doom maybe enter the MCU through that movie, but we'll have to wait and see what they do with it. I haven't really thought too deeply about a Black Panther 3 necessarily, but I want to see where these characters collide next, and what's the conflict, where they're going to come together, and where Shuri's going to stand in the team, and get some more interactions with the characters. But what I love about the Black Panther franchise, and I'm sure they'll do this with 3, is that it does feel so standalone. Like, out of the Cap trilogy, the Iron Man trilogy, the Thor 4 quadrilogy, however you say that, and then the Ant-Man upcoming trilogy, I think this feels the most on its own. And so whenever I think of Black Panther and the first one, the second one, and soon the third one, I do want it to still be self-contained, just like the first two. Like, I love how this series seems to really stand on its own. Even though there's a lot of MCU connection here and compared to the first one, there's still not as nearly as much as, say, a Multiverse of Madness, a Love and Thunder. Like, it feels very self-contained. So I'm hoping that 3 keeps that same thing going, to where if theoretically I was not an MCU super fan, I could watch 1, 2, and 3 and be okay.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. And that's what I like about the second one. It's like people are asking, like, oh, what shows, what movies do I have to watch? Just watch your first Black Panther. That's all you need. You don't have to watch
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, if you want to know who Val is.
Oh, yeah.
To quote King T'Challa, I don't care.
Delete that footage.
But yeah, you know, that's one thing that was really weird about Val and Ross, is that they're in this movie, and I still don't know why. I guess to tell us that Ross is kind of like on the lam, essentially, but like,
I love Ross. I mean, he didn't do much, but it was fun to see him.
But when the next time Val turns up, I definitely need her to play her hand. I think
they need to get more depth to her.
The only big thing
she's just in little cameos, and it's like nobody really knows who she is.
Well, this is it. And the only big thing she's done was to send Yelena after Hawkeye. But I mean, apart from that, you know, it's kind of been
with that Family Man picture of Hawkeye.
Yeah, I need her next thing. Her next thing to bring us forward, and I don't
hopefully
want
the Thunderbolts
necessarily have to. Yeah, but I don't necessarily want to have to wait to Thunderbolts for that, because she's appeared in enough things now.
We need a Thunderbolts initiative. We need.
It's not till like 24, is it? 25?
Oh, is it 24? I thought it was next year. My bad.
Or is it? Is it next year already?
2024.
Oh, it's 2024. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we need. There, you know, there was a plan. We need a plan. We need a mention of a Thunderbolts initiative. We need her to be. I need Val to be a little more memorable in these movies and appearances.
Yeah, I agree.
She's just popping up.
Kind of like
it's like, okay.
Yeah, kind of like Viola Davis with Amanda Waller. Like,
that's another conversation.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I'm
really like Viola in that role, so. But
bring her over to MCU. Just swap her out. People will be fine with it. It's whatever.
My issue with Val, something I said on Leo's stream we did the weekend it came out, right, is that when Nick Fury shows up at the end of Iron Man, he says Avengers Initiative from the moment we are introduced to that character.
Yeah.
So whenever we see him in Coulson, we know what that's building to. Val is just here, and while we know Thunderbolts is coming because Kevin Feige told us, the MCU hasn't told us. So she's just got pointless appearances so
that's
far.
Fair.
And it's kind of
just popping up.
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're pointless. I just think that the next appearance needs her to force her hand. Do you know what I mean? Like, she needs to be active now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, was there anything else you wanted to cover before we call this an episode?
I'm good.
I am fulfilled.
All right. Well, it's been a fun conversation. Everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode of the Chatter After, make sure you give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss anything else. If you're listening to us on the podcast feed, check out the YouTube channel. There's a lot of fun stuff coming within 2023, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, so you can take us with you on the go. The exact same timestamps, so if you stop 23 minutes in on YouTube, pick up 23 minutes in on Spotify, and you can take us with you wherever you go. Gentlemen, it has been a blast talking Black Panther, Wakanda Forever with you all. Leo, thanks for joining. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. It's always a blast talking with this panel, like literally one of my favorites, period. You guys can find me over at Geekly Goods on YouTube. Just search in Geekly Goods, type it in that search bar, y'all. You'll see the 2 G's. Come on over. Let's talk a little bit of geek, guys. We got a lot coming up, especially a lot of good MCU content, awards season content. Today, if you're listening to this today, we will have a weekly news live stream that I'm doing with my boy Loretto over from Twitter. So got a lot on the list, excuse me. So come on over, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you there. Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it, man.
Christian, Where can people find you?
So you can follow us over on Twitter at Film Optics. That is Optics with an X, Optix, because some people ask how do you spell it, and I'm like, it's literally Optics. You just take out the C and the S, you add an X. But you can find our audio only podcasts on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. And we just have a few things coming up this week. You know, Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery spoiler-free review will be dropping on November 28th on podcast platforms. And then we have our Willow episodes 1 through 3 spoiler-free review dropping on November 30th. And as of right now, that's pretty much it. You know, we're going to be, it's award season. I got a lot of packages. I don't think I'm going to get through all of them, but we're going to try our darndest. But you know, you can expect a few of those episodes coming out on our podcast, as well as like the Whale, the Fablemans, you know, all of the high society, you know, all those amazing films out there. But I'm very excited for it. But thank you so much for having me back on, Mike. It's been a pleasure. I know I wasn't as talkative, but you know, 8-hour drives will really do a number on you.
You know, we had a very great hour-long episode, so I think we were very concise and to the point this time.
I think so. It's great.
You know, you love it. You love it. Elliott, thank you so much for joining us. Where can they find you, man?
Yo, yes, thank you for having me again, Michael. This has been a lot of fun. I'm glad that we were able to all sit down and get this video going. You guys can find me at Hakuna MaChatter on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me on YouTube, Hakuna MaChatter as well. Guess what? There's a little month called December coming up, and what happens in December? Big old
Santa.
Christmas. Santa happens. Yes, no, this coming week I've got my work cut out for me where I get my Christmas content ready. I'm dedicated this year because I wanted to do it last year and it didn't go ahead. But this year, I've got a lovely 4 days this week where I can get it sorted, all scheduled up and ready for y'all. We're going to be looking at some diverse Christmas films over Christmas, some films that we may have missed that I'm sure a lot of us have seen. But, you know, we always have our favorites, Elf, the Santa Claus, the Grinch, and I can go on and on. A lot of them always white-led films. I want to show you guys some other films that maybe give you something else to watch over Christmas time. So join me on that. It will be kind of similar to like a book readers club. We'll take a look at a different film each week. And hopefully you guys can find some new things to watch over Christmas.
That sounds amazing. And tie in the Guardians holiday special.
It was
Beautiful.
a banger.
Love
Beautiful.
I need to
Beautiful.
watch it, man. I need to watch it.
Banger, dog.
It's like 40, 45 minutes. Like it was over in no time.
Marvel, do more special presentations, please, because that was
great.
outstanding.
More specials, less shows.
More specials, less shows.
I'm with that.
And we're good. But yeah, can't wait to check out all the content you guys have coming up. It's their channels, podcasts, all going to be linked to the description down below so you guys have easy access to it. And with that, we will see you guys next time. As always, Wakanda Forever. Peace.